Buenas noches, Ship Familia. Welcome to our very first latinXfactor partnership dedicated webinar. I'm Dr. Robert Loredo here at Ship National, and our show tonight is Game-Changing Tech. It's a conversation with Robert Loredo, who is a Ship member and an IBM Master Inventor. Robert will be giving us an insider view to IBM's leading edge technology. We also have Angela Miles, who is the Diversity Program Manager for IBM. So welcome to Robert and Angela, the IBM team. We are very excited to have you join the show tonight. So I'll pass over the mic to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dora. So I appreciate the introduction. Yes, I'm part of the early professional hiring team, which essentially is that early professional university campus recruitment and conferences. So this will be the fourth year that I've been able to work with SHIP as an organization in partnership with IBM to recruit wonderful talent such as yourselves into our company. So what I want to share with you today before we turn it over to Robert is this link right here for our internships and full-time roles. This is a unique link that's exclusive to this event. So I encourage you to use this. I'll pop it in the chat for you so you don't have to worry about writing down all those slashes right now. But I also want to bring your attention to a second event that we're going to be hosting on September 21st. It's from 11 to 5 Eastern time. And it is a SHIP members only exclusive career fair. Great opportunity to connect with IBMers, learn about what a day in the life is like in their role, explore opportunities, and figure out what's next for you, whether it's an internship or a full-time role with IBM. So I'll pop these in the chat, but until then, I'm going to turn it over to Robert. Robert, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Angela. Here, let me stop sharing here for a bit. And so thanks everyone. Welcome everyone for joining, and thank you for the invitation. I was originally going to do some slides and everything, but I figured we'd make this treat this pretty bit of a conversation because I believe that most of you are in community colleges or universities in the area. So, and me being a former SHIP student member and now a professional member and a member of the particularly the South Florida professional executive board, I wanted to kind of spend the time a little bit to see if, just to give you a little bit of some insights, if anything, on the technology, as well as how you go from a community college to a working professional, which I believe most of you want to do, right? So, so just to give you a little insights on my background. Myself, coming out of high school, I didn't go through the traditional path, which most of you know is you graduate high school, you get some good grades, you go to a nice college, maybe with scholarships, you complete college, you can maybe go get your graduate degree, and then you'll get a job and life is great. I took the scenic route. My brother, on the other hand, did take that route. He got, valedictorian, and he got a full scholarship, went to med school, did everything right. I took the scenic route because at that time when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot and fly jets. And of course, because I have wear glasses, this is a few years ago before laser surgery, they weren't allowing people with unless you have 20/20 vision to be pilots. So I thought, well, then why am I going to school? Let me drop out and play in a band. So I did that for a while. Obviously, it didn't work out. Otherwise, you all would know who I am. So instead, I went back to school, got my GED. I studied very hard for it because I gave up and didn't really pick up a book since then. And then after that, I started going to community college. And of course, starting community college, I didn't know what to major because I didn't know anything else other than music. So I said, well, let me major in music. And I did, and everything was fine. It was kind of boring because I knew everything they were teaching me, but I went through the mechanics. But then later on, one of my counselors, my mentors in college, who was actually one of my professors as well, said, you should take there was a test you take that kind of gives you, I can't remember the name, I think it was Briggs-Myers test or something like this, that kind of says your personality, what kind of job would be ideal for you. So when I took the test, I found the first position was, I think, a teacher. The second one, I can't remember what it was. And the third one was an engineer. So I thought, well, that kind of helps me. I guess I could be music teacher. So I looked to see what salaries on a music teacher were, and they're a lot less than what I was working at the time. So I thought, well, that might not be too well. So then my friend at the time said, well, you always play with music. and it says engineering, why don't you try music engineering? So I said, oh, that's a great idea, because I can just build and work with music as a profession. So I looked that up and I said, okay, let me switch. So I just switched my major from music to music engineering. What I didn't realize was that music engineering was actually an electrical engineering degree with music electives, which means all of a sudden my math went from just college algebra and one check mark and I'm done to this long list of math classes, Cal 1, Cal 2, Cal 3, differential equations, linear equations, all these things. I have no idea what any of this stuff means, but I have to learn it. And I didn't know anything. Math was not my strong point. So I struggled. I took like college algebra, I think 3 or 4 times. Didn't do too well. I didn't take it many times because I liked it. It's just because it was very difficult. But again, going back to mentoring, and this was going to be a theme here. When I went to a math lab that they have there, when my community college, and they have tutors there. And at the time, I was wearing a necklace that had a G clef on it, it's a music symbol. So the guy noticed that and he said, "Hey, I see you're wearing a G clef. Do you know music?" I said, "Yeah, for years, I played since I was a kid." He's like, "Oh, well, then let's try this differently." And he, instead of teaching me the theory part, he kind of translated it to music. So I said, well, imagine this, we're looking at it, you're trying to solve an equation. Okay, instead of this, let's replace this with, pretend you have a chord here, you're missing a note here, and you want to find out that missing note. And basically kind of gave me that explanation from a different perspective. I understood that more than I did the problem statements that are in the book. So I said, "Oh, you mean if I do this, this, and this, is that right?" And he said, "Yeah, there you go." And I said, "Oh, really?" So and that became my aha moment. At that point on, I look back at the math and all right, now I get it. Now I have something associated with, and that was it. From that point on, A's and B's all the way through. And then from there, I transferred into a university. And I went to the University of Miami here locally, where I live here now. And there I started majoring in, I switched from electrical to computer engineering, only because, again, another mentor said, I was in a computer class and I was finishing problems a lot quicker than anybody else. He said, "You should really look into it because you're pretty good at it." So I did, and I liked the profession at that point when I started asking questions. So I switched over, and hence I was now a computer engineer with electrical engineering minor. Now, because of the struggles I had in community college to get into the University of Miami and to get to hopefully at that point trying to find a job, at that point a lot of the recruiters are looking for 3.5, 4.0 and above or something. Something really. I was like, wow, that's way out of, so I struggled. I couldn't get an internship. They looked at my resume. They're like, "Yeah, sorry, try again," et cetera, et cetera. So I then thought, well, I went back to my mentors. I went back to my professors at the community college, particularly my physics professor. And I said, I'm struggling. I know that if you need to get a job, usually you get an internship. It usually helps out. And I'm having a struggle doing that. He says, well, you're not really, he goes, "Talk to me as you would a recruiter. Tell me what you're saying." I say, "Well, here's my resume and I'm looking for work in here." And then he asked me, "What kind of work you're looking for?" And I'm, as usual, "Anything you have." And he's like, "Well, that's wrong already. You have to be really focused. You have to have at least an idea, right? Computer engineering, I'm in the computer says a lot." So I had to kind of narrow it down. But the one key thing that he did tell me was, look, if you don't get an internship, it's not the end of the world. Number one, if you can't get an internship, you have in your school, in the community college, in your university, you have internships available right there, which are called professors, right? Because these professors, they do research with a lot of companies, with a lot of government agencies, et cetera, because they apply these grants and they have research. So they're always looking for help. So if you walk into a research, talk to your professors and see what are they doing. And if it's an area that you're interested in, see if they're willing to volunteer and help out with those projects. If they are, of course, the professor is always looking for help because it's free labor for them. Great, and somebody to help finish this up. But now you're working with a professor on a project that's actually a real project. It's usually by grant. The one that I was working on came from the Department of Homeland Security. Another one came from a private company. So you start working with these projects. They're working with a graduate student, helping them out, doing research on a paper. For me, because I had an electrical background, I was doing wiring on this underwater vehicle that they were coming up as part of a project. So they needed help with someone running the wires and soldering on things. So that's what I did. But by doing it, I started learning what are the different components do, how does the motor work, what is that? It was a stereo cameras. They were doing 3D imaging. And this is, 20 years ago, dating myself here. So 3D imaging and those things were very, very advanced at that time. So understanding how to do that and do it remotely without having someone, there also involved AI. So it's very early AI stuff. But that's all skills that I picked up in this. And this now became my internship. Not officially, but in a sense, now when I have my resume, I'm putting these projects in there, right? So I worked on an unmanned underwater vehicle that was basically looking, because this is just after 9/11. So it was looking for, potentials in our ports. So this became something that, part of that project was that. So that helped build my project, my experience now in this stuff. So it's not just purely education, which is still important, by the way. Let me emphasize this. I'm not saying, hey, take it easy, just work with your professor. You can get a job with a 0.2 GPA. I am not saying that by far, right? But there are struggles. So the difference here is my grades weren't always, that was in the beginning. So once I remember that aha moment, my grades were back up again, right? So the latter part had the grade push. What this emphasizes, look, this isn't a fluke. Look here, I'm doing some actual work, right? So it helped benefit that past that I had, right? So I'm doing something here. I'm contributing, I'm writing, I'm co-authoring on papers, I'm working on these different things, right? And of course, every semester you can jump from one project to the next, right? So now it's not one thing that you did for the year, it's 2 semesters a year. In 2 years when I was doing my graduate school, that's all I did. So I had 4 projects on my resume. That helps because now when you go to a recruiter, you now have certain skills. You kind of have an idea of what you like because you already worked in it somehow. So you understand, oh, I like doing hardware, I like software, I like this, I like that. So now when you know exactly what companies are doing in that area, you know what the job entails when you see the different skills that they're looking for. So now you have your dynamic resume, right? So you say, oh, I like this job, I'm going to put in certain keywords that they use, etc. And when you go to recruiter, you're now talking their language, right? You say, well, here's what I did. I had a project that was, machine learning, image processing, blah, blah, blah. I wired this, all this other stuff. I'm talking about the project. I didn't do everything in it. I mentioned what I did, but I am familiar with the project itself because they were going to ask, oh, how did you do the machine learning? Well, we applied the researcher there applied this and this and this, and I helped by preparing the data, or I helped get the sensors come in and clean up the data for them. This sort of thing, right? And they understand one thing that they get from that is 1, your knowledge on the technology. 2, you work good in teams because you work with a professor and with a student, right? So you're comfortable working with people that are your senior in a sense, right? So you're not, how you are weak in certain things, but you can work with that to be able to help develop it. And 3, more than anything, is that your skills are variety now, because if you're doing one every semester, in 2 years, you have 4 different projects. You have a wide, broad, and not just depth knowledge, but very broad as well. So all that stuff really contributes. So now your discussion with the recruiter isn't just, here's my resume and you're just reading out bullet points. I graduated here, I did this, I did this. It's now you're telling them a story. And that's what recruiters remember. If you tell me, if I start giving you guys, some background, my GPA was this, I did this, I studied this, I did machine learning, I did this, whatever. You might remember 2 or 3 things, but now with everything I told you, you go, oh, Robert, oh yeah, he's the guy that dropped out of high school and he struggled, but he did a project with Homeland Security about because you remember the story, right? People remember stories. That's what you want to really kind of get with your recruiters at that point. So I'll take a little pause here to see if there's any questions. I know that I see some stuff in the chat, but see if we have internships, but it's not related to what I want to focus on in graduate school. Is it possible to still get into graduate school? Or what can I do to improve my chances of getting recruited into grad school? Okay, this is actually a good question because this is very similar to mine. I'm actually right now currently going in from finishing my PhD. Why, I don't know at this age, but I'm just like, you know what, I did half of it, let me finish it. But I had a similar situation. When I first wanted to go, this is back in 2008 when I was originally going to go back. I wanted to major in bioinformatics because back then it was big, and that's basically machine learning and medical diagnostic systems, etc. Looking at DNA sequencing and these sort of things, protein folding, this kind of medicine. But the school that I was looking into, they didn't have anything like that. They didn't have any professors that were knowledgeable in that. So instead of really doing anything about it, I was like, all right, forget it, then I'll just do something else. And I kind of gave up on it. Now, fast forward a few years ago, I started getting into quantum. And I thought, oh, maybe looking at quantum and neuroscience and neuroinformatics and coming a couple of quantum neuroinformatics, for example, that might be interesting. I went to a school to ask about it, and nobody, of course, was in quantum, so new. So I talked to, again, another mentor, and again, this is the theme. And I said to him at work, who's also a professor, and I said, hey, listen, I'm trying to get a PhD, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, well, most of the time, if your topic is something that's very difficult for them to do, it might not be that they don't know how to do it. It might be that they haven't really looked into that area. So what he recommended was look at what your professors those professors are actually working on, and you find a way to enhance it by your topic. So it's not them thinking of it, this is something different, I don't know what that is, keep it away. It's all right, here's what you're working on now, and here's what I think we can expand it. So my thing was, okay, you're currently working on parallel programming and algorithms and stuff in with neuroinformatics, with neurology, etc. Let me add quantum to see where can we put quantum into those algorithms. So now it's still working on the same thing, but I'm just extending another technology, and I'm focusing on that, right? So that helped them kind of think, oh yeah, okay, that's never thought of that. Let's work on it. I had some meetings, and then he liked the idea and said, let's do it. And now he himself is reading all these books on quantum computing just to kind of keep up with me, and he himself wants to contribute. So I wouldn't rule that out. Just always working with talking to the professors, not necessarily the school in general, right? So that's one thing I'd recommend there. Sarah says, how are you able to find and connect with mentors? I'm still looking for people to guide me. It's so hard. Good question. And this is why the thing with mentors is because SHPE for me was the main mentor. Most of the mentors that I talked about right up to now, all of them are or were SHPE members. So that's that I wanted to say. Key, because SHPE, that's one reason why I'm still with SHPE. I'm always connected with SHPE. I'm always doing these kind of things when they come up, even at this time of the evening. I don't care. I'll put the time in because it's the least that I can do to give back to the same community that gave me so much, right? So I know yes, exactly. A lot of love here for the SHPE. I don't know any particular situation where I was at a SHPE meeting or something where I either didn't learn anything, or hopefully that we're able to contribute something to people that I interacted with, or where I saw that there's something going on where somebody was affected in a very positive way, right? And it's always it's professional, personal, anything, because familia, we're Latinos, they say, why do you yell so loud? It's like, we don't yell at each other. This is how we express our love, So we're just very passionate about a lot of things. So I'm very passionate about this, and the mentoring, both from a how to connect with mentors. Mentoring, at least when I was in the student, they had something called mentorship, SHPE. But that's what they did. But it was great, and that was how I got started. So I was aligned with a mentor who was a professional in computers. I think at that time he was working for HP, so we met through there, and he was the first one to give me that idea of, hey, go talk to your professors because they might have some work you can do. Help me with the internships. When I became a professional at IBM, there's a lot of, at least locally around here, there were a lot of IBMs that were SHPE members that are also IBM, and we have a big Latin community here and diversity community. So I meet a lot of folks from there. So not only from my university, but also from SHPE members that I meet in SHPE national conferences, etc. And we make obviously a lot of friends when you go to these conferences, SHPE national being the biggest one where you make the most friends, I think, because you see everybody from everywhere, companies, professionals, students, etc. So mentoring is so to connect with mentors, I highly recommend two things. One, obviously your local SHPE chapter. If you're a student, student chapters everywhere. If there's no one at your school, look for a school nearby and do two things. One, get with them to get a mentor. Two, find out from them, how can I build a SHPE network here at my school? We love doing that. We want to find ways to be able to have some presence that we can help, right? We as mentors are looking for that, right? We have our, but we're especially now in this virtual world we're in, it's easy for me to talk to somebody on the other side of the world and just help mentor in whatever way we can, right? Even this call, I don't know any of you here on the call that are on the thing, but I'm hoping I can get with one of you to do this. And you're still looking for people for you to guide you. I know it's difficult, but again, reaching out to member, and of course the other thing you can look into is the SHPE national. When you go to a conference, find out the different professional chapter members that are there. There are a lot of representatives. You're in a SHPE region, so you can always go there and ask there as well to see, hey, who in my area is there? Because they'll have a list. Somebody lives nearby, somebody's near around. And now virtual, you don't necessarily have to be in the same city. So finding a mentor, I think, would be a lot easier. So I hope that helps, Sarah. Jacqueline says, as someone who has both academia and industry experience, how do you bridge the gap between these two in your expertise area? So initially you're going from academia to industry. So that's a bit of a growing pain, right? Because it's not homework and, here's an assignment. It's here's something you have to do and here's something else you have to do. And oh, by the way, all these are high priority and you have to work with these people. It's a lot of stuff. So it takes a lot of adjusting. But you can do that very quickly. That's part of one of the things you want to learn early on, particularly when you're doing these internships or when you're working with projects and a big group is, you want to be able to interact and collaborate. And that sounds easy, but in reality, sometimes it's very difficult because you have people that are very alpha, like it's my way or no way. And then you have people that are just laid back. Yeah, whatever, I'm okay with it. Just tell me what to do. So you have all different types of personalities. So you have to, one, be aware of these personalities, find out what their strengths and weaknesses are. And then this will help you become a leader in that sense, is knowing how to leverage each when needed, right? Somebody's weakness might just be because they just haven't done it in a while, or they don't know how to get started. So you try to train them. So you want to build up your team, right? And those who like to be in charge, fine, tell them, say, listen, I love your leadership. I like how things go, but I need you to delegate because we need to do this. I want to be able to multiply you 5 other times, right? So let's try to build this team to be just as effective as you are, right? So it's understanding that sort of experience. So that's that from academia to industry. Now, once you're in the industry, how do you link back to academia? Because obviously, if we're engineers, scientists, what I always used to, I remember somebody told me this, or if it was just something that came up, a lot of people tell me a lot of things, is engineering school or college, in a sense, for engineering, what it really teaches you is how to learn, right? Because as engineers, whatever you learn, particularly me, it's been years now since what I learned in college, everything I learned is pretty much either obsolete or different now, right? Back then we had CDs and DVDs. Right now we don't have any of those here. We can stream everything now, right? So it's a big difference between, so you're always learning. So adapting and learning, that you need your academia skills, right? Industry is understanding your work, your domain, your industry that you're working in, and how do you improve it, how do you make more optimize things, etc. But from the academia, it's like, all right, now how do I ensure that I'm always up to speed, that I know what's going on, that I know what what the next technology is. Like, for example, in my case, when I started IBM, I started right out of college. I was in mobile development. In fact, it was in 2004 when I started. So I was, when we were working on mobile devices, we got if you guys remember the BlackBerry phones from way back then, we got them before they even were BlackBerries. They were like in a silver case, just all metal, and we just connected to it and we just wrote programs for it. That was it. Then eventually that became that. Then we had these Nokia smartphones. And then of course the now popular iPhone came in after that. So everything boomed in mobile devices. Now I could have stayed there, but then I thought, no, there's got to be something else going on. So I looked there and I looked and said, well, let me try, collaborative applications. So these are applications that kind of link people together. And then around that time, social media started coming up, right? Back then, in those days, you had MySpace, Orkut, Friendster, and a little company called Facebook that was in all those, right? So, and now a lot of things change. A lot of those other popular sites are gone, but you still have Facebook, and now you have these other type of social media, right? Snapchat, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. But in between there, I said, well, this looks like an interesting technology. So I moved there and got into social computing. And that's when you look at all these things on how to do data analysis, etc. So that was that phase. And then from there, the next thing that was coming up, particularly in IBM here, we had our Watson play on Jeopardy. You guys remember that from 2011, I think it was. We had a computer, Watson, that was our AI system, played on Jeopardy against the 2 top Jeopardy players, and it won. So at that point, that was the beginning of what was the commercial age of AI, if you can consider there. So I jumped over to AI. So by jumping over, I mean, again, this is where the academia comes in. I had my day job and I was studying, but I still need to, this is a different technology. I needed to learn it. So you take some time off. At that time, it was books and, courses and things you can register and take. Now you have YouTube, you have Coursera, you have edX, you have MIT courses, you have all these online courses. You can learn things on the fly now, which makes it a lot easier too. So you do that, you learn a new technology, and then once you have enough, and then you just start looking around, looking for work. You try to build those skills, right? You want to build that next level of skills. So then from there, I moved to AI, did some stuff there, and then from there went into blockchain, then into blockchain for a little bit, and then jumped over to now quantum. Again, this is all just things I looked. I said, "Oh, this looks interesting." Learned up as much as about it, read up on it. Again, mentoring is good. I reach out to people that are in the know because you want to really get understanding that am I learning the right things? So those all came in hand, and that moves forward. During that time, so where the Master Inventor thing comes in. So in IBM, become Master Inventor, it's not just inventing things, which I have patents on, but it's also creating inventors, right? So they look at give back to the community, professional community, and elsewhere. So how many people have I helped them mentor to become inventors, and they invent? Not that I co-invented. I mean, hey, let's you and I get together, let's come up with an idea, we'll publish it, now you're an inventor. No, that's not mentoring, that's co-inventing. Mentoring is, let me teach you what I know. Now you go on your own, and you should be putting some patents in and getting some disclosures out there. And that's what the Master Inventor is. They make sure that it's not just you have patents and you know the process, but that you're also creating these leaders. So that's what I really like about that particular role, is that it is a give back, right? And again, going back to SHPE, this is just things that I learned from SHPE. It's called give back, giving back to the community, giving more than you can receive in that sense. And in fact, in my email, it's a quote. Somebody told me who it was from, but I don't remember. But the quote is, "A leader is not defined by how many. A leader is not defined by how many people that you follow you, but how many leaders you create," or something like that, I think. But generally, it's basically that, right? It's like, if I have 100 people that praise me, great, but that doesn't really make me a leader. My leader is, out of those 100 people, are they now 100 leaders, right? That is a leader. So that is a definition of it. So again, the academia industry experience, it's a balance of the two. You always want to be innovating. So always keep learning. That's the main one thing I would say there. Nicholas, after graduating with a master's in CS, I have no professional experience outside of my CS projects and come from a non-traditional background. What advice could you give to someone with few professional experiences and too old to jump into an internship? Well, you're never too old to jump into anything, but you are, but to get, so no professional experience, again, that was my background as well. I didn't have any professional experience. I mowed the grass for when I was a kid, and I knew how to wire things together, but that wasn't part of what I want, those weren't skills that were going to help me get a job. Again, it's mentorships, right? Try to find people that are in that area. From a project perspective, again, there's so many online courses that some of them have capstone projects. Your own university and your professor can even give you a project. You're in CS, if you're doing your master's. When I was doing my master's, every semester I picked a different project to do. So I didn't write a thesis, because my thing was, a thesis is just one project that I built out in 2 years. I published a paper. With my professors, I said, well, in each semester, I'm going to pick a different project. I'm going to work on a project, and at the end, I'm going to write a publishable paper. So it's something that I can publish. So the professor, it had an abstract and everything, and then if it had anything to continue, I would continue on with his graduate student. But that's how that would kind of work out. That way, I had that. But in that instance, like I mentioned before, that's how I'm creating those skills. So I would definitely recommend going out to your computer science professors. Go to your computer engineering department. They always have projects going on. And it doesn't have to be this big elaborate project. If they don't have an internship or anything, any projects they have going on with somebody else, just have them say, listen, give me a project that you think might be viable somewhere that I can do. And I'm sure they have tons of those things. Let me jump here to the chat, because I know that's letting up a bit here. So let's see. So Virgil, are there any projects that IBM is doing in unmanned systems and or swarms of unmanned systems, drones? It could be either hardware, software, AI, or algorithms. There actually is one that I know of. It's I forgot the name of the project. Maybe and if you remember, it's the artificial intelligent boat that's going across the Atlantic or around the world now. The name escapes me now. I will make sure to look it up and send it to you when I remember. But if you Google artificial intelligent boat traveling around the world, it'll come up. It should come up. So if somebody has it, please pop it in the chat. It's going to drive me nuts otherwise. But there is that one. So it's so we do have that project, and that's actually a very interesting project, because it's the team that I know is working on it is a team that I know back from my AI days. So really proud of that.
Is it the Mayflower?
Mayflower, yes, that's it.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. The
You're welcome.
Mayflower project. Yeah. So if you Google IBM Mayflower project, you'll see the whole thing, and you can actually follow it as it's going across. But that is a completely unmanned system. It's a boat. It does everything. It's from under the traffic patterns in the shipping lanes. Obviously, you can't just cut across the ocean. You got to follow certain rules. It knows I think it's solar powered, or maybe it's propelled. I can't remember what the power is. But it understands where it is. It's the weather patterns. It gets weather data and analyzes it, so it knows what to avoid, so it won't go into a hurricane and disappear on us, right? So it's a really, really interesting project. It's got a lot of engineering in it, so I highly recommend looking at that. That's one of the more recent stuff that we have. And for the rest of it, yeah, just if you search on IBM projects, if you go to our IBM research page, we have different sections on stuff that we're looking into research as well. So I highly recommend looking at that. Let's see, John Bernal, how can we handle an interview or boss that is giving us negatively biased interview review? Oh, interview process. This is always fun. So interview, I always recommend a couple of things. One, like I always say, eye contact, right? Always look up. I always the dean at my university would always make a joke. He goes, engineers, you can always see them because they're the ones always looking down at their feet when they walk. So, you know, we're talking because they're just kind of hiding that. So you always want to make sure you get good eye contact and make sure that when you're speaking, it's clear, right? Because one thing that really differentiates, because, you know, body language is a big thing, particularly for recruiters, right? They need somebody who's, you know, who can communicate well, right? I can't have somebody who's going to, yeah, well, I think maybe it's a good idea. Maybe we can work on it. You know, that's not going to really help, right? So try to always work on your body language. There's a great book, and I can't remember it now, but I'll share it with you all afterwards, and maybe they can share it as well. It talks about body language and how to talk in a sense to because it's, I think it's a formula. It's like 55% is body language. You know, if you're leaning or if you're just leaning back, 13% is 37% is your tone of your voice, and then the last bit of percentage is really what you're saying, right? The context. So always try to make sure you pick out crisp things, go right to the point, but keep your body language up. So when you're interviewing, it's eye contact. One of the things I always do for eye contact, particularly when you're talking to a recruiter before you're interviewing, is when they're reading your resume, I call it the eyebrow check. So it also helps with it because you want to look at their eyebrows. Because, and this was, I got this from this book also, by naturally, just physically, when somebody's impressed by something, their eyebrows will go up, right? Will go up, right? When you say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Oh wow, right? Eyebrows just naturally go up. So when your recruiter is looking at something and you're talking to them about some project and you see them go, oh wow, you did that. Look at that and you think, okay, and put that to memory for a couple of things. One, it's good that they got something, they're impressed by something. Two, when you go interview with that, and usually that recruiter is also the same one doing the interviewing. When you're interviewing, just remember, okay, this recruiter found this impressive because of that, you know, oh wow focus, and you saw the eyebrow. So make sure that when you get to that part of the topic, elaborate a little bit on that one. Talk, because it was obviously impressive. There's something impressive about it. So try to elaborate a bit so you can kind of find out what it is that they understand and what they was that were impressed with. Because they're impressed by something, you want to really focus on that and not on the other negative stuff, right? So that's one thing. Two, obviously, the more eyebrows go up, the more impressed you are. So my rule of thumb is if you get 3 eyebrow pops in one reading, you got an interview, you got a job practically, right? So, and so it's always good. But and again, this goes to telling the story, right? You want to, you know, I know a lot of we all use bullet points, but try as you're talking to them while they're looking through this. Oh, I see you did this. Start that story. Yeah, I did this. I did this. So always keep that in there. So people are very impressed. And then, of course, by looking at the eyebrow, it gives you that sort of eye contact. So if you're worried about eye contact, it's just feel like, they can see in my soul or something. Don't worry about it. Look at the eyebrow. It still looks like they're looking at the eye, but you're just a little bit above. So if that helps. All right, let's see where, oh no, I lost, oh, here we go. So I hope that answered that. So to interviewer, boss is giving just kind of eye contact and focus on the good stuff. Those are the things that I'm interested in. Okay, good. You can also start your own project on GitHub. Yep, this is good. Good advice. Thank you, Angela, for posting the research link. Let's see, Alexa, key takeaway, count 9 times the word. Yes, good key takeaway. Louis, I'm interested in quantum computing and other quantum applications. What books would you recommend reading to learn about the subject? So, in fact, let me put the link here. If you go to so we have an open source community, and obviously our code and our quantum computers are open for you to use for free. So you can actually start learning and actually start programming a quantum computer, which is, again, something interesting to put on a resume. Hey, I programmed something on a quantum computer. So if you go to that site, that's basically our homepage to our Qiskit page, which is Quantum Information Science Kit. There you'll see tutorials, and in there we also have a textbook. It's a free textbook you can watch. It takes you from 0 to hero, right? You don't know anything about it. It starts with the very prerequisites. What is a qubit? What is entanglement? What is superposition? The basic algorithms, the key algorithms, the advanced algorithms, applications, everything. Even you could go as far as reading chapters on quantum information, image processing, for example. So there's a lot of stuff there. So I recommend that as it's free. So this is probably the best way to get in and not spend anything, because I know a student budget, I still remember those days. So I always start with the free stuff first. After that, there's also the website is just above it. I don't know, maybe did you guys see it? Maybe I didn't send it to you. Oh, I only sent it to host and panelists. You got a thank you. Yeah, I just realized I put it in the wrong link. So thank you, Louis. Angela's going to post it for you. So go there first. I recommend that's the right place to go to start off with. From there are other books I can recommend. There's actually a good book called, here, let me write it out so you guys can have it, Dancing with Qubits. And that is by Bob Suter, who actually is an IBMer as well. And this is a great book because it's not too theory. It's like at a very sweet spot. It gives you descriptions, has great examples. He does give you some math around it, but it's not too crazy math, right? You don't need a doctorate in mathematics to understand it. And then the other one, Learn Quantum Computing Using Python and IBM Quantum. And that's another book. And that one, the self-promotion, that's my book, but but it's more for developers. So if you're developing programs and you want to learn how to develop and how to actually program on it, that book is the one that I had written last year. I think I'm working on a second edition now, but that's another book. Both of them are from Pack Publishing. You can get it on Amazon, etc. But those are books that that kind of get you started, and they're not too in depth. Now there are other books that are very in depth. The main one is one called Quantum Information. It's by Isaac. And that one is this is the quantum, let's call it main book. So quantum information, I think it's quantum, I don't have it handy, but it's quantum information, I think information science, I believe that's the title, but it's basically, we call it the Mike and Ike book. That is the quintessential textbook. There's a 10-year anniversary book that just came out last year. That one goes on everything. I mean, theory, applications, the types of hardware, all this stuff. It's the book. So that's definitely one I would recommend you all pick that up. Thanks, Angela. So let's see. Any other questions here? Okay, in the chat. Oh yeah, do you have any tips for students interested in IBM for consulting? We do have roles. We have a consulting team. It's our global business services team. They have consultants in there, solution architects, etc. They have now a quantum computational science team in there as well. So we do have that. There are different types of internships or startup type programs that they have in there as well. But I'm sure Angelo, or if you go to the website, can give you, yeah, perfect, give you some details on that. So we do have lots of roles for consulting. So it is a large part of our business. So. Okay, let me check the Q&A chat here and see if there's anything new. Yes, Eric Alvarado. I'm an incoming PhD student in material science focusing on spectroscopic investigations into quantum materials. My plan is to leverage the skill set in the physics underpinning these materials and optical experiments to ultimately work on quantum hardware. I noticed a strong emphasis on quantum computation software work, but I was wondering if there were quantum hardware opportunities at IBM. I was also wondering if you had any advice on what skill sets I should be trying to develop for those kinds of positions, taking advantage of being back in a university setting. Yes, actually we do. So at IBM, we're fortunate to be what we call a full stack quantum shop, if you want, lack of a better term. What that means is that we manufacture everything from the qubit, and we manufacture the qubits that we use. Some of the components, obviously, we buy, they're off the shelf, we use for cooling the qubits, but we do manufacture it ourselves here in-house. We do all the manufacturing, we do all we have the platform, which is on the cloud, so we use our own cloud platform here for that. All the code is open source, but we're always optimizing and enhancing the codes there as well. And then on top of that, we have our developers or computational scientists and consultants that are in this area, et cetera. So we have a full stack software, consulting, and hardware. So for your particular area that you're looking into, yes, in IBM, we use superconducting qubits as the technology. So look at things like Josephson junctions, using the different manufacturing techniques to be able to develop these particular different systems. And of course, then there's a hardware on top of that, right? It's the processor that the qubits sit on. The hardware that uses the microwave resonators that we use to manipulate the qubits. How do you entangle the qubits together? How do you integrate one device to another device, right? So instead of having 10 qubits on one device, I can stack them and now I have 20. If I have stacked 10, I have 100 qubits. How do you integrate those systems? So there's a lot of work around the hardware in there. obviously, material science is very important as well, because we want to kind of come up with a way to not only find the right materials that are eliminate any noise or error interference, but also how do we make it more robust, right? We want to be able to build these in a scalable fashion too, right? So those are all things that we do here in-house, and we, of course, yes, we are looking for folks with those kind of experiences. So I definitely do recommend Eric looking into our either internships as well as our full-time employment that we look for. And of course, what skill sets, it all varies. We have actually an open source product called Qiskit Metal. Let me put it here in the chat. And you can actually find it there if you Google it, or if you go to qiskit.org. So Qiskit Metal, that is actually a software how to develop your own qubit, manufacture your own qubit. So I highly recommend looking at that. They have tutorials there as well, and some good. So we also have a Qiskit Slack workspace that you can join, and in there's a Qiskit Metal for hardware. So there's a lot of people from all around the world. It's part of the open community. So you can go in there and actually collaborate. There's some people doing some work on it and doing different things. So I highly recommend you guys all connect with that. And you can get to that by going to the qiskit.org link. Go all the way to the bottom. At the bottom, you're going to see the Slack icon. Just click on it. That's going to take you to a form. You fill it out, and then you'll get added to that group. Okay, let's see. I see Angela's posting some great information. Perfect. And look at the Q&A. Don't have any questions there. Answer lots to kind of close these off here. So we answered that. We answered Sarah's. We answered Jacqueline's and Eric's. So those are done. All right, so I guess I'll open any other questions, or I don't know, Dora, if there's any topic you want me to.
Absolutely. I want you to talk more about yourself and your story and your struggles and throughout community college. And can you think of any point in time where you can share your story there?
Yeah, so I can actually share probably one of the biggest struggle I had, as I mentioned before, was just learning the context. I mean, this is difficult for me, coming from having no experience in mathematics and engineering, being really, it's your foundation. So so because of my grades the first time, I was put on academic suspension for a year. So I had 1 year of really, and that year was really the time I was like, okay, this is not good. I'm at where I'm at now, and there's no other place to go but down. So I need to really fix that. So I went back to the community college again with my advisor, and I said, hey, I really I need a second chance. Can you help me out here? He said, all right, no problem. Maybe fill out a form. I said, this is my next second chance, and if I don't do it this way, I'm out. I said, okay. So went back to school. He had me enroll. He limited my enrollment to just 2 classes, and rather half the class, half the full-time credit. So just to kind of try it out, I was like, no problem. So he said, but take the college algebra because you got to pass that. And I said, all right, I will. I went through it. I struggled. I went to see the tutor. This is before I saw the tutor that gave me the aha moment. And I was still struggling. I did it, but this time I got a D+ or something. So still failing, but it was better than what I had before. But I couldn't do it. So hands got kicked out again. And I thought, I got to really, really focus. At that time, I just studied. I went back, and of course, I remembered that one form he made me fill out was to say, this is your second and last time. So I thought I'd be slick about it. I said, well, let me look in the offices and see where his door is closed, but the other counselor is open, and maybe I could talk to that other counselor, or maybe they'll let me in. So I got I saw the door, but I said, well, let me go in now. I went in, I said to the secretary, can I see the counselor to get readmitted? She goes, sure, one sec. She walks in and she says, oh, she's not there right now. And then at that moment, the counselor that did see me before, he saw me there. He just came out of his office, and he says, "Oh, Mr. Diggs, I see you're here. There's a student here who wants to talk to a counselor about getting readmitted." And he goes, oh, "Okay, come on in my office." And he went to his file and pulled the file out, and came in. So he sat down. He sat in front of me and just kind of said, "Oh, so what brings you in my office?" I said, "Well, I kind of want to come back. I need another chat. I was on, suspended from studying, and I want to come back, and I really want to I studied, I did extra work. I'm ready to do whatever I need to do, whatever you think will help me kind of get back in." So he opens up the file he had. He goes, "Sure," but him show me, and he highlighted in yellow, specifically and show me. He goes, can you read the yellow part? And that's where it says, one and only time, and that's it. So I said, yeah, I know I signed this last year, and I understand, but he goes, give me a reason why I should let you in one more time. I said, I'll give you the one main reason. I said, I know that this is it because it's math, and if I don't get it, but just give me this one shot, the second chance to really try it. I want to really go through it. So he goes, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you just one course, this math course, and I want you to take this college survival course that he was teaching. And it's basically, and this one, if you haven't taken it, I highly recommend taking this. But I never do, but it should be required. But this college survival course basically teaches you how to take notes, how to, manage your time, and all this stuff. It's really stuff I wish I knew when I was a kid, really. But it was a great class. And then the math class, of course, during this math class, he recommended I go to the math lab and go and have them help me with where I'm struggling. And that's where I met this guy with the math, with the music background. So I passed the class, and I passed his class, and I said, all right, now we're going to go one semester again. We're going to give you 2 classes, and let's see, because he doesn't want me to shoot me up really fast. So he goes a little bit at a time, but you apply what you learn here. So with all of that, the 2 main things that I learned, I think best, is one, proper note taking, because I was the kind that I was like writing everything that they're saying. It was more like stenography than anything. And I learned that is a wrong way to take notes, because you're writing down that, but then you're missing that concept, that understanding. So I learned, they taught us how to do what's called mind mapping, draw, like if you ever see some TV shows like lawyer movies, they do that all the time. If you ever see a movie or TV show with a lawyer, they're drawing on a pad, you'll notice they'll have like a name, a square with an arrow point here and a circle around, and all stuff. All that really means something. This is an object entity. It's linked to here and this. So there's a way to study that way. And now there's YouTube videos all over the place, so you don't need to have to take a class. But taking proper notes good notes is good, because it's when you go back and go through them and you're like, all right, I get it. And before I was reading a thing and I missed words, I missed concepts. So this was much more clear. And of course, associating your, if you're struggling with something, find something to associate it with. I know you've heard it millions. I've heard it a million times before, but until I actually saw it and did it with this guy with the music background, that's what it really hit me. I was like, oh, that's it. So now I still think of things in music and then kind of translate it over, only because that's how ideas are coming. I have 100 and I don't know how many now, 180 something plus patents. They're all like sort of like, just simple ideas. But I'm like, what if we twist this? What if we do this? What if we do that? Right. So it's the same thing, right? You think of an idea, find a different way of looking at it. We're engineers, right? We're supposed to play with things, right? We're supposed to take things apart and let's see how they work and say, oh, this can be better, right? There's a famous or a popular YouTuber that does electronics. His quote is always, why use it when you can, break it open, when you can take it apart, is actually his term, right? And that's what he does. He'll get like some new component. It can be like, I remember he had the newest iPhone. He said, we got his iPhone, and now let's take it apart. So he puts it on the bench and cuts it, opens it up and starts, okay, here's a filter. Oh, here's how they did that. And it's just interesting, right? So that's what we are, engineers. We got to do things like that. So always look at things from a different perspective. That is kind of what really was the foundation for everything else moving at that point, right? So I know, so if you're struggling with courses, you're struggling with understanding something, and you always will. Even now, I'm reading papers in quantum, and sometimes it takes me a good hour, 2 hours to get through just page 1, let alone a paragraph sometimes, because I have to look at it, go back, maybe I have to go to another book and read up on stuff. I always said that every once in a while, we've all taken calculus, but it was a colleague of mine that said, always have your college calculus book around, because you open it up, just pick up any section and reread it, because you never know how that'll come in handy somehow. And I know there's a bunch of times where I'm like, why would I do that? I took it, I'm done. I don't want to look at that again. My purpose is that, thank God, I'm never touching that again. But of course, I'm reading things and I see, oh, sine squared this over this. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Now I'm going to go to the calculus book, go back, take a quick look. And oh, I see it now. And it'll hit you. You don't necessarily have to read it, but you'll see it. It'll just trigger that thought. Oh, I remember this. Or in this case, that nightmare. But that kind of what I think would be one of the things I would recommend is time management, and just being able to kind of think like an engineer, just think differently, move things around, right? Let's see, what do we have here? We have a question here from Jacqueline. When did you learn how to advocate for yourself? It's awesome to hear you didn't take no as an answer when asking for another chance. Oh, yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I think part of it is maybe I'm stubborn, maybe, but but I guess well, put it this way, for that second time I went back to my counselor, my advisor in a sense, and for the life of me, I don't know why I didn't keep in touch with him. I would buy him a brand new car right now if I could. I mean, I am where I am and what I do today because of him, because he gave me that second chance, which he didn't have to. Again, in my mind, I was like, well, if I'm not going to go here, I'm going to go back working for the county and cut the grass. I'd be retiring now from Dade County, Parks and Recreation, and that would be it. But he himself kind of, part of him said, yeah, he listened to me and gave me that shot. But I would say it has to start with yourself. You have to be able to know, understand your limitation. A lot of people say you have to know your limitation. Like, everybody knows their limitation, but do you understand it? Meaning, I know that I struggle with math, but do I understand why I was struggling with it? My struggle wasn't that I didn't understand. I couldn't get the intuitive understanding of what this x plus 3 equals 5 means. Like, I'm like, well, what is that? I mean, that's simple equation. Obviously, I'm using that for simple, okay? But it could be any problem, right? Why couldn't I get it? Why is everybody else writing something down and I'm looking at the question staring like I have no idea where to start? So it's having an understanding. So once you understand that, I think then you get a better understanding as to what your capabilities are. Even if you feel like I don't know what that is, then make that part of it. Well, now let me try to understand why that is. But always, because that's probably the one thing that'll help you yourself become an advocate, because you figure, well, if I know that I can learn anything given the right amount of time or given the right mentors and resources, because that's the other main thing is I never advocated for myself without at least checking, right? Because your mentors are supposed to help you with this sort of thing, at least can help you. It's supposed to. They can't help you with these sort of things when you're stuck and you really don't know, I'm out of options. What can I do now, right? So in fact, at that time when I was doing the second one, I said, well, what do I have to lose? If I go and he says no, then at least I tried. That was the one main thing. But after that happened and I did that and I got the second shot and everything started going well, that stayed in my mind as sort of just to kind of say, well, you know what, if I can get through that, you can get through anything. And that's where you always want to have that lessons learned. Something bad happens, figure out how it happened, why it happened, so you can not only prevent it from happening, but you can help others prevent them from happening to them as well.
Robert, do you mind if I add something about personal advocacy? Just because I went through a program this summer where we did a session on personal advocacy.
Oh, sure, please. Yeah.
So just real briefly, I won't get into it in depth, but one of the questions that a lot of students asked us about personal advocacy is, how do I balance really standing up for myself with bragging about myself? And it's so important that you start to practice very early on that personal advocacy and really sharing your accomplishments. And it can be just that. It's highlighting some of the things that you've done really well throughout your academic career, throughout your professional career, getting in the habit of doing that early, recognizing that not everyone around you sees your accomplishments. And so it's up to yourself to really be able to speak up and say, I did this, I accomplished this. And that is what will help you even in your professional, well, through interviewing, but even in your professional life, to highlight to your manager, hey, I accomplished this quarter, this month, this year. And this is why I have set myself up for success and I am ready to move on to the next challenge. So really get in the habit and looking at personal advocacy as an opportunity to shed some light and highlights your accomplishments, and not necessarily that you're trying to plead your case, but it's more just really sharing what you've done, because not everyone sees all the little details of what you're doing in your everyday life, whether it's academically or professionally. So get in the habit, start doing that, start owning it and feeling confident in that.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. That is a good point. Definitely a good point on that. One thing I did remember, in fact, you mentioned this, I don't know why I remember this, but on the about accomplishments, particularly for those of you looking for work, because I was just seeing all the flyers and things they're posting on here. Always make sure that you're listing your accomplishments, and your resume is actually the best place to list your accomplishments, right? You want to put that should be your brag board, right? Here's what I've done, again, without really bragging, right? I'm the best at this, right? You don't want to be the ones leaning back in the interview going like, yeah, after you hire me, I'm the best there is, and no one's going to hire you with that attitude, right? But you want to make sure that but focus on, put your minds in the mind of, or in the role of the recruiter. So I know I can't see you, or I don't know if you can vote here, but just for example, how many of you on the call right now have on your resume, under skills, do you have Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office or Microsoft PowerPoint? And if you want to put the Asia Chan, go ahead in the chat. But I mean, so that's what I call is like a filler, right? Because, when have you really seen a recruiter go, oh my God, Microsoft Word, thank God. I have an entire team and none of them know how to write anything down on that. So obviously that's not going to win anything. What I'd recommend though, is take that out and replace it with something like, let's say, for example, like if you're in wireless, right? You want to work on wireless. It's, you can say, well, I'm familiar with the 802.11 code. The industry standards, those kind of things, right? If you're in in healthcare, or you're going into healthcare, talk about HIPAA. You don't have to memorize what these industry specifications are, or industry standards are, but just be familiar with what they are, why they created them, what they mean in general, because that would be look more interesting there, right? So if you're going for life sciences or something in medical, and you say, I know what HIPAA is, you put HIPAA, you put HL7, these sort of industry standards, that will attract, again, maybe another eyebrow raise to say, oh, you know what HIPAA is. Can you explain to me what it is? And so yeah, it's a standard on patient privacy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's used in these sort of industries for this, protects the patient, and et cetera. So that is something extra you could put in there. Obviously, that can replace something like Microsoft Word or something. I mean, that is a good skill, but it's just going to be assumed you're graduating from college. I'm sure you've used those tools, right? So always put yourself in that recruiter and think, what would they find impressive in this area? So industry standards, that's something I'm sure. And again, you want to stay above and beyond everybody else, right? So if you want to, stay on top of it to them to remember you, it's, oh yeah, I remember talking to Angela and she had, all these industry standards that she understood and knew what it was about. That stands out, right? Because everybody else is going to have the same skills. They're going to have Microsoft Word on there. They're going to have, I took a C++ class. I took cryptography, etc. That's the foundation, right? But where are you up above here, right? So that's what you want to kind of really highlight. Right, any other questions? Let's see. Nothing in. Oh, here we go. Does the skills portion actually help the recruiter? Because a beginner could put down a skill that an expert might not, because they do not think they have enough knowledge of it. My point being, isn't the skills in the resume relative? Well, I would say this: the skills is very important to put in there, because if it's assume you remove it, then you tell me you've done some work. Now I don't know what programming language you've used. I don't know what background you have. Did you just program it, or did you also deploy it onto the cloud? So are you familiar with the cloud aspect of it? Did you pull the data yourself? So you're familiar with database admins? Do you know how to do pre-processing if you're machine learning, right? So those skills really helps me understand what you know in order to know of this project that you're talking about, what you did. So always good. And the second thing, that more importantly, is, particularly now we're all virtual, right? So, so when you put your resume, it's going online. I very highly doubt, and Angela might know this, is where she's not going to sit there with 10,000 resumes, one at a time, read them and go through. No, we have technology. It's a search engine. She's going to look for particular skills. She's going to put things, don't be surprised if the recruiter is copying their entire job description and posting it as a search engine just to weed out 50,000 resumes down to something that they can actually go through. So keep in mind that, the more, that's what I talked about, the dynamic resume, is that when you're putting a resume for a particular job, see what skills they're looking for and how does it map to what you did in college, right? So if you did a project, great. Are there certain skills there that match it? If there is, put the skill in the description or put it in the skills area, etc. So it's always good, because that, one, helps keep your resume within the group, and two, your resume now speaks the language of the recruiter in the sense that was filling out that particular form, right? And thanks, Angela just posted the link there for the.
Yeah, I wanted to get this in here because this is a unique link for this event. So we want to make sure that the students that are interested in applying to our jobs do so with this link, because this will take you right to our site where you can do some searches on the different types of roles, and you're more than welcome to apply to more than one. And then also we're going to have our SHPE member exclusive career fair. So I'm going to pop that in there as well if you're interested in attending and making some one-to-one connections with some IBMers.
Great. And we're at the top of the hour, so I don't know or if you'd like any wrap up, or if you maybe we can keep going, but I'm sure most people want to get to bed or something.
Yes, we do need to wrap it up. So Robert, if you want to leave any lasting words with the audience, we'll give you the opportunity.
Definitely just a couple things. One, like I said, mentor was a big thing because it is. SHIP is a very important thing because it was for me. And if resources, it's SHIP, right? And there you'll definitely find a lot of mentors in all different aspects. And SHIP is not, it's engineering, but you got people that are engineers, now they're managers, etc. So it's definitely a good familia. And the third one, and more importantly, if anything from this is, don't give up on yourselves. You're going to hit struggles. We all do. Everybody's broken. That's my thing, right? We're all broken in some way, right? It's how do you resolve, how do you dust off, get back in and say, all right, let's try that again, right? Even if you're beaten down and you feel like this is the last straw, nope, try it one more time, because you never know if that second or third or even fifth shot is the one, right? So definitely keep being persistent as much as you can. You'll get there.
Great advice, Robert.
All right. Well, SHIP Familia, join me in thanking Angela and Robert. What an amazing show tonight. We appreciate our partnership that we have with IBM and look forward to more shows with you guys. So just a few reminders that our upcoming convention is in Orlando in person, November 10th to the 14th. So make sure you register for that. And that this recording, along with all our other latinXfactor shows, are on our SHIP YouTube channel. You'll find all of our shows there. So signing off from SHIP National, buenas noches, stay safe and well. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.